I do have to take some issue with some of the one-minute speeches that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were engaging in about an hour ago. I saw that the Democrat majority leader was on the floor with a chart, and that chart said, House Republicans are running out of town to cause an economic meltdown. Sounds ominous. Sounds terrible and threatening, and all sorts of calamities going to ensue. Where are Senate Democrats? Where is Chuck Schumer? They've been MIA this entire week, not even in town, but hell, they've been MIA all year, not doing a thing in the Senate, except for being the personnel office for the administration. That's all they do. They run through nominations, and heck, they're not even that good at that. So what do? They run out of town. Where was the president last week? Japan. You see this ominous threat of a looming debt ceiling date, an X date as it's being referred to, of June 1, is all manufactured crisis and theater. We know that. Americans know that. Secretary Yellen wants to figure out how we need to deal with whatever interest payments need to be paid in June. She can prioritize those payments. She can make decisions to figure out how to carry this country forward. She can walk on down here, brief us, meet with us long before the June 7th date she's currently planning to come down to talk to us, and have a conversation about, I don't know, how about taking those COVID dollars back that are sitting there unobligated to the tune of $50 billion? How about taking the IRS dollars back that are there to expand the Internal Revenue Service, an IRS which, by the way, targets the poor and minorities 3 to 5 times more than the non-poor and non-minorities? That's the truth. Why don't they take that $80 billion, combine it with the COVID money, turn it into dollars right now that you can go pay loans with? Voila, no problem. But see, my Democratic colleagues won't do that, because my Democratic colleagues prefer the fear created with a manufactured crisis. They prefer to use that crisis, as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. They prefer to manufacture a crisis to jack up more debt on our children and grandchildren to the tune of $4 trillion. That's what they want more than anything on earth, is to spend more money to increase the power of government, to undermine our freedoms, to destroy the American way of life, and they are doing it right now. That's what's happening. The fact is, we had some of my Democratic colleagues went to the floor, and one individual said, quote, make no mistake, they, meaning Republicans, have no plan. Well, I'm sorry, we passed a bill in April. We actually passed a bill off of the floor of the House that raises the debt ceiling $1.5 trillion, provides an actual path to fiscal responsibility, and we did that in April. Oh, but see, we have no plan. We got to have this manufactured crisis. We had another quote. President Biden already lowered the deficit by $1.7 trillion. They say his budget would cut the deficit by another $3 trillion by eliminating wasteful spending on big oil and pharma, we're told. But it is, in fact, our Democratic colleagues who prefer to maintain their massive subsidies for the elites and the wealthy in their so-called Inflation Reduction Act just last year. My friend from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, said, quote, I ask you, think about the last time a person has said in this country that the government does too much for them. When was the last time anyone has heard or seen that? I'll say it. I'll say it right here. I don't want the government doing most of the things that the government is doing to interfere with the ability of the American people to carry out their lives. Federal, state, and local. When was the last time you had a bureaucrat show up and you said, oh joy, thank you, I'm really glad there's a bureaucrat here? When was the last time you were thankful for $32 trillion in debt, $100,000 almost for every man, woman, and child in America? Anybody thankful for $32 trillion in debt? Anybody? Anybody thankful for a border that's wide open being exploited by cartels while fentanyl comes in and kills our children? Everybody thankful for that Department of Homeland Security that doesn't actually secure the homeland? Everybody thankful for an FBI that went after Scott Smith and labeled him a domestic terrorist for daring to defend his daughter in a school board meeting because she was assaulted in a bathroom? Anybody thankful for the IRS knocking on your door, auditing the poor and the minorities 3 to 5 times more? People thankful for that? Are you thankful for the EPA or the Department of Interior that sent a man to prison because he had some ponds on his ranch in Montana? We have a government that is weaponized against the American people and is undermining our liberties, and they want more of it. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want more government. They want more taxes. They want more spending. They want more bureaucrats knocking on your door, like Mark Houck in Philadelphia when he woke up to this door being knocked on by local law enforcement teamed up with federal law enforcement to go carry out a warrant to arrest him because he had defended his son exercising free speech, because he is a pro-life activist in Philadelphia. That is your government at work. The fact is, we have a decision to make here. What are we going to do? Are we going to listen to the wailing and gnashing of teeth of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, projecting a manufactured crisis to exploit fear to try to raise our debt limit, a credit card limit, by $4 trillion? I want to be very clear. And I want to be clear to my colleagues on this side of the aisle. Anybody making a deal right now? $4 trillion? Are you out of your frigging mind? When I came to this town as a lawyer on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the entire debt was $6 trillion. And what are we doing? We're having a conversation, blowing my mind, a conversation about raising our debt another $4 trillion. Why? So we can continue to fund the very bureaucrats that at least my colleagues on this side of the aisle campaign against. Well, guess what? You have a power of the purse for a reason. You should use it. Federalist 58, James Madison, what did he say? He said that the power of the purse granted to the people's house was the most powerful tool you can give against the tyranny of the executive branch. My colleagues on this side of the aisle all too often like to go around and campaign against all of the things that the bureaucracy is doing or that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle support. But when it comes down to game time, and it's game time right now, when it comes down to game time, are we going to use the power of the purse to defend the American people against the onslaught of the tyranny of the executive branch? Or are we going to tuck tail, take the first exit ramp off, and walk away? Because what I'm hearing right now, being debated, being negotiated, is taking the first exit ramp off to cut a deal. Because that's what we do in this town. Cut a deal. But that deal is not a deal for our kids and our grandkids. We passed a responsible bill in April. My message to my Republican colleagues is hold the line. My message to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, quit lying to the American people, quit advancing this fraud of a manufactured crisis, stop telling people that you can just continue to spend money we don't have, stop lying to them that there's more tax revenue to go get when we're at the highest level of tax revenue ever in our history, matched only 2 other times, World War II and in 2000 at the end of the dot-com explosion. Almost 20% of our GDP we are taking in by taxes. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle hide behind that, and they refuse to acknowledge that this government is too big, too burdensome, too weaponized against the American people.